Hi, topic number 3 on my series to prepare for the Regents exam is on parallel and perpendicular lines. It begins with some basic knowledge that parallel lines never cross, that perpendicular lines or line segments form a right angle, and it is possible that two lines may not be perpendicular and may not be parallel. They could just be intersecting. So there's 3 types of lines to consider. There's parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and lines that cross, that intersect, but are neither parallel or perpendicular. In terms of writing the equation of a line, y equals 2x plus 7 is an example of a line because of the way it's set up there, with the 2 being the slope and the 7 being the y-intercept. If I wanted to create an equation that was parallel to this, I would also set it up so that it began with 2x. This way, the 2 lines would have the same slope. They'd have the same steepness. Both would have a slope of 2. And if you graphed it, the only difference between the 2 equations would be where they would begin. So the first equation is beginning at 7 and has a slope of 2. While the second equation would begin much lower at 3 and have a slope of 2 as well. So that's how you design 2 equations that are parallel to each other. You make sure that their slopes are the same. If I wanted to get equations that were perpendicular, what I would need are the exact opposite in terms of slope. So for this particular case, the slope was 3. If I want to create a line that is forming a right angle to this original line, I'd have to make sure that my slope was completely different than 3. And the farthest we can get away from 3 would be a negative number. And instead of going up 3 over 1, we'd want to go up 1 over 3. We'd want to go in the reverse direction. So this is how you create an equation that is perpendicular. You need slopes that are negative reciprocals. And if I sketch that out, what would it look like? Better axis there. The first line would start at -1 and would go up 3 over 1. So it would be a very steep line. While the second equation would begin at 2 and go down 1 over 3. And that's a pretty good freehand sketch of what would happen to those 2 equations. They would form 90-degree angles because the slopes are negative reciprocals. So here's a quick check to see if you understand the basics. Answer these questions for yourself to see if you're actually going in the right direction. If I wanted an equation that is parallel to this equation, what would the equation look like? There's lots of possibilities, but if you're trying to make something that's parallel to this equation here, you'd have to make sure that the slope was what number? 4/3. The second number could be anything other than 1. This would guarantee me that my slopes were exactly the same. Alright, quick check on perpendicular. If I had y equals 2/5, how about -2/5 x plus 4? And I wanted to create something that was perpendicular to this. There are many possible choices that you could make, but if I wanted perpendicular to this equation and to that line, my slope better start off with a positive 5 over 2, and that would guarantee me that I've got perpendicular lines. And the last number could be basically anything. It could be anything. It's all about the slope to create perpendicular and looking for slopes that are negative reciprocals. All right, so moving on to some questions that may be just a tad bit more advanced. If you had the equations 2y equals 6x plus 2, and you had another equation that was 3x plus 7y equals 14. And they asked if these equations were parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Since they're not in slope y-intercept form, you'd have to get the y alone. So divide everything by 2 in this equation, and you get y equals 3x plus 1. And I'm doing that for two reasons. One, because it'll be easy to graph if I get the y alone. And the second reason is so that I can identify the slope. So the slope on this equation is 3. Now let's look at the second equation and see what the slope is for that second equation. I begin that investigation by subtracting 3x from both sides to start getting the y alone. So if I subtract 3x from both sides, it gets things moving in the right direction. I get 7y equals 14 minus 3x. Dividing by 7 gives me y alone. Y equals 2 minus 3/7 x. So now if I take a look at this equation, I can identify its slope right away. The slope here is negative 3/7. Are the slopes the same? No. Are they negative reciprocals? No. So in this particular case, they are not parallel and they are not perpendicular. So the answer here would be neither. These are neither parallel or perpendicular. All right, another kind of question they might ask you to do involves writing the equation of a line. So actually it's a pretty popular question where they'll say determine or find the equation of a line let's say perpendicular to a given line and they'll throw on one more condition, and they also might say and also make it pass through a certain point. How about 1 comma negative 3? All right, that's the question right there. Take it one step at a time. I need something perpendicular to this. To determine if it's perpendicular, what I'm going to need to do is get y alone. So I'm going to take the equation and rearrange it so that the y is by itself. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, and that's helping me move things along in a good direction. Then I've got to get rid of that negative 2. I'm going to divide everything by negative 2. So now I've discovered that y equals negative 5 plus 3x over 2. Once I've done that, now I know the slope of the given equation. The slope that they gave me is equal to 3/2. Now how about the slope that I need? If I need perpendicular, I don't need 3/2. I need negative 2/3. So that's the first step in solving this equation, or solving this problem, is to figure out what slope you need. So far I know it's y equals negative 2/3 x. But I don't know what the y-intercept is. To figure that out, I'm going to need to use y equals mx plus b and insert the three numbers that I do know. I do know that the slope is negative 2/3. I do know that my x which was given to me in the beginning of the question, was 1. And I do know that my y was also given to me as negative 3. So the only thing I don't know is b. I can solve this little equation to find out what b is. So negative 3 stays by itself. Negative 2/3 times 1 is negative 2/3. And then all it's left to do is get b alone. So I'd have to add 2/3 to both sides. If I add 2/3 to negative 3, I end up getting negative 2 1/3. So to answer the question, the equation I would need would have to be y equals negative 2/3 x, and then the y-intercept was negative 2 1/3. And that would be finishing that kind of question off. And those are the types of questions that you'll see.